Ready for a digital dive? You're listening to the GZ Chop Shop Podcast, the weekly tech and gaming media podcast that breaks down the latest news, law, and more. So plug in, because the GZ Chop Shop starts now.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another week of the GZ Chop Shop Podcast. I'm your host, Project Hitachi, joined by my good friend and co-host, Warners. And back in our news again, we're just going to kick things off. I'm just going to say, if you're a Sony fan, if you're a Microsoft fan, probably definitely if you're a Microsoft fan, this may not be the episode for you because, boy, oh boy, you want to talk about two spoiled kids sitting in the sandbox fighting over each other's toys. This is getting a little bit out of hand with them. So Microsoft continues to try and buy up all of the Activision Blizzard properties, not even just in the US, but the other branches of Activision Blizzard globally, to the point now that the FTC has stepped in and basically saying, hey, you know, you guys are doing too much. like you're trying to monopolize this situation here, which is something that Sony came out and, you know, was crying foul about, and basically saying, hey, you know, they're going to make their games exclusive and that's going to hurt our market. And, you know, can somebody stop this? Because Activision Blizzard, they're massive. They're huge. That's a big developer. They have World of Warcraft, Diablo, Overwatch, a lot of heavy hitting PC and console games. So this has been like an ongoing thing, honestly, for like the latter half of this year, ever since Microsoft made the big move. And then this isn't their first big move either. I mean, they bought, you know, ZeniMax, Bethesda, like they're buying up these very big, very popular IPs, like now 1 or 2 a year. Dude, and they're moving rapidly.
This should terrify every gamer that is out there, every console owner, every PC owner, everyone, because what we have going on right now is a huge tech war. It is insane, man. So we have, on one hand, we have Ticketmaster. You know the what Ticketmaster is having issues with right now. Is they're basically the sole owner. Like they're the only way to get tickets for big concerts, big shows, big comedians. If you want unless you could go through a smaller third party, you're going to get tickets through Ticketmaster. And right now they're being, people are crying foul on them because they're setting prices so high because they own the only way to really get tickets.
That they could charge.
They're the only distributor, so they're in hot water right now. Especially, I think Colorado is kind of leading the front. There's a lot of lawsuits right now coming down on Ticketmaster, and big names like Taylor Swift as well, and quite a few other celebrities coming down on Ticketmaster for insanely high prices. Because if you think these musicians and comedians are pocketing all this money, they're not. They're getting a very small portion of this money, and then you have Microsoft out here year after year after year buying, ever since they got into the gaming industry, they've been buying up IPs after IPs. They don't own any personal IPs. They never have. And they're just out here buying everything. I would say most of the time when we've seen Sony make a huge purchase, it's been because Microsoft keeps making big purchases. And the reason this should scare all of the gamers around the world, everyone who loves tech, is because we have all these tech companies who are buying things up in such mass, spending so much money, literally billions of dollars. Even in this article we read here on IGN, Phil Spencer basically, plans to have Microsoft spend over $100 billion or more on investments going in over the next year or two. And we're going to end up with a very tiny portion of the gaming industry owning all the devs, all the studios. And if you think $60, $70 is a lot for a game right now, just wait until they're like, not only are these games going to be more than $70, but if you want to play that game, well, now you can only buy this console or that console. You know, it used to be when you bought an exclusive to a console, it was very expected. There was only a handful of exclusives, especially with Sony, but that was normal. It wasn't because they went around buying up everything and then turning around and saying, well, now if you want to play a game, it can only be on play. Like that was set in stone from the beginning. Like they had their own IPs, they had their own studios, and naturally they had their own exclusives. But now we have all these tech companies in the gaming industry fighting over who is going to own the most, and also arguing over Call of Duty is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft saying, oh, well, you know what? There's a lot of concern. They're trying to say that Sony is the one that's crying foul on the Call of Duty, but it's not Sony. The gamers cried foul originally. They're like, hang on, you know, we want to be able to play the games that we love, that we've always enjoyed on any console that we've wanted to. And it's been that way for decades now, at least a couple of decades with some of these bigger titles. But Microsoft, and time again, they've bought IPs and then they've turned around and made it exclusive to Xbox.
Yeah.
And if you don't think this is going to happen with Call of Duty, it is. And now the FTC has to get involved because it's getting so out of hand. We're talking tens of billions of dollars.
Yeah. All for a big
and Meta's in trouble as well for, you know, going out on a limb here and basically they're trying to own the metaverse, which, to be fair,
they're creating.
They kind of created it.
Yeah.
So don't go after Meta and call foul on Meta when they create something and then become basically the sole owner of it, and then try to say they're trying to prevent competition, but not go after Microsoft for everything they've been doing.
I think where in Meta's case, where the concern is they would become the solely recognized. They would be the pioneers in creating the virtual space. But they probably are trying to do the same thing Microsoft, because I know this is going to tick off the Microsoft fanboys, because Microsoft can do no evil, can do no wrong. But back in the 90s, Microsoft was bottlenecking the access to the internet. One of the recommendations for PCs was that it had Internet Explorer as the sole browser on that computer.
Yep.
So only way people got to use the internet was through Microsoft. And that's how they were suffocating, you know, any competition, because everyone else had to go through other means to get their browsers on PCs, while Microsoft paid to just have their browser already put on the PC. They were suffocating the competition. And
don't forget what else Microsoft did too. They bottlenecked the entire graphics card industry to where it was like 60 or 70% graphics card.
70%.
Automatically went to Microsoft so that they can make consoles, which it wasn't just the scalpers that was an issue and the crypto mining. It was a lot of it was Microsoft. It didn't make a lot of news, but we had talked about it back several months ago.
Mm-hmm. And Microsoft paid to prioritize the graphics cards in their favor. And a
lot of people defended Microsoft. Well, you know, they spent the money and Sony should have done it first. Like, if you really think that that's not going to come back and bite you in the ass just because you want to, you know, basically ride Microsoft's dick so damn hard. Like, are you so blind that you like, of course the FTC is going to finally call foul. Of course everyone else is going to call foul. Cause if nobody stepped in, you really think you're going to kiss their ass that hard? Microsoft can do no wrong, and they won't turn around and charge you $100 for a fucking game. We're right there at the $100 mark. I mean, they already sell the upscaled, like, deluxe versions of a lot of games for well over $100. Yeah. They're trying to see what you're willing to spend. And then they look at the average of what people are willing to spend. And then they mark the prices up the following year because you spent the money.
You spent the money. You showed what you were willing to give for their product or someone else's product that they purchased. But yeah. Once again, with the metaverse, I can see why they're going to get called out, because if they become the originators, they're the pioneers in it. But basically, it's saying, can you own a non-tangible space? You can own the access to your non-tangible space, but what they're probably afraid of is metaverse trying to say they have sole ownership of all kinds of virtual space. They're trying to own virtual space, which when you really think about it, you cannot own that. Mm-hmm. You can be the gatekeeper to it. And I think they're just trying to prevent metaverse being the sole gatekeeper and claiming to own space. And for anyone who's having a hard time understanding, saying you own virtual space is the same as saying you own air. You can't own it. It's a virtual, it's always there. We're just finding ways to tap into
I've read the Lorax. I know what happens.
So it's the same thing. The virtual space is already there. People are just finding ways to tap into it and utilize it.
Well, there's money involved now.
Then there's
digital currencies, there's NFTs, there's virtual gaming. Anytime there's money involved, we all, understand that there's going to be a way, there's going to be a potential monopoly. There's going to be people and companies involved that are going to do everything they can to make the most money.
Yeah.
The FTC has their work cut out for them.
Yeah. They're going to be busy over the next few years.
And honestly, it's not going to stop at the FTC, dude. The entire American government is going to end up getting involved. I would not be surprised if this ends up in Congress.
Yeah, especially with, Microsoft and Metaverse both making these grandiose moves, especially Microsoft, because, and just to give another point, another article you put with Phil Spencer saying that Sony is trying to maintain their dominance by keeping Microsoft small. There's something I always live by. And my grandfather used to say it, and I've come to find out as I've gotten older, that is extremely true in almost every situation. You always accuse others of what you're guilty of yourself. And I found out in adulthood that is extremely true, because the first one to point fingers is pointing fingers to deflect from their own guilt. Now, not saying Sony is an angel and saints, because I feel that they're too close-minded. I feel that Sony is too exclusive sometimes. And if it's been their business motto and it's worked for them, I kind of get it. They don't want things that don't work for them. Maybe they don't like to share their toys and play nice. So, and then here we have Microsoft saying, oh, in this era where everything's accessible for everyone, we can use that to our advantage. Let's just scoop up everything and then say it's accessible to everyone. But it really wouldn't be. You would only be able to access that stuff through Microsoft products. And right now, the tantalizing phase is the subscription service, because that's the one thing they pointed out. They said, well, Sony doesn't put any of their day one games on subscription service, but we do. Yeah, for now. And those games rotate. Sony just says, pay for the game and it's yours as long as we let it be downloadable. At least it's forever yours. Where Microsoft is, they have two different business models. And I'm like, in this gaming era, the one thing gaming's purpose was to bring people together, play together, enjoy together. And then somewhere along the line, we've gotten to the point where we deviated from that. Gone are the days where one person could have the console on N64, PlayStation 2, and your buddies could come over and you all play a game together. Gone are the days where there were arcades on like every, block. You could just go to your neighborhood arcade in the mall and everyone was there playing games together. The reason gaming exist. The reason it became so popular was that together. Now we've been pushed to this point. Sony and, even Nintendo, definitely Microsoft have pushed to the point where everyone has to own their own console. They have to. You used to be able to share games, trade games. Nope, they locked all that stuff. They were the first ones that started doing the locks on games and stuff, and then streaming services just followed suit afterwards. But it was games first that decided to lock their stuff and be like, nope, everyone has to own their own version of the game, their own hardware, XYZ. And I'm not saying gamers are off the hook, because there was a lot of people that were burning discs, burning entire games from one disc to the other so that they wouldn't have to buy the game. And, but honestly, that was probably less than half the gamers that actually had the hardware to do that or even knew how to do that in the first place. But, now we've got Microsoft and Sony competing for exclusive rights to all these developers, when honestly, so much more would get accomplished if they would just work together. Like, why? I would love to understand why they can't just work together. Why does Microsoft feel the need to buy any devs? Like, I would love to hear from anyone that works in that industry, works at Microsoft. Why do you have to buy the dev? Why do you have to own it? Like, why can't you just invest it in whatever project they're making? Why can't Sony, for example, Sony bought Bungie as a knee-jerk reaction to what Microsoft has been doing,
because they know that any of these studios and devs that Microsoft buys out, it's going to be a matter of time before Sony no longer gets to invest in those games. Mm-hmm. There's money to be made. You invest in them, and then they pay you a certain amount, and the games get to be allowed on your console. That's how it's always been. Mm-hmm. With Microsoft buying out all of the studios that they can possibly buy and investing so much, what do people honestly think is going to happen at the end of this if Microsoft were to continue on the route they're on, buying out everything? You think you think there'd be a Sony left? You think Sony would be able to actually compete with Microsoft? Because there'd be no studios left.
There would be no studios.
Everything would be owned by Microsoft, and that's their goal.
Yeah. They want to be the sole, and it's kind of the equivalent of like the metaverse. It feels like Microsoft wants to be the sole owners of gaming. And I fear that if they get through with this Activision Blizzard thing, nobody is safe. If the FTC can't stop them and they get to purchase up every property of Activision Blizzard, no one's thinking about it now, but the next one's up on their block in their path would be someone like Steam. I mean, we already, and I know some people are probably thinking Steam, no, why they'll never go after Steam. Don't forget, they tried to buy Discord. Anything tied to gaming, Microsoft wants to buy. They wanted to buy Discord, and we discussed this, and I was like, I hope that they don't get the rights to Discord, because then they're going to do this whole bundle packaging thing that's going to force their products on people who don't want their products. I said Discord will wind up getting ad heavy. The support would be only probably to members. I said Microsoft would set up some membership bullshit, and then you would wind up, they would be forcing everyone into Nitro. It would be something completely different, but it would be another Microsoft subscription thing. And to lure people in, they would be like, oh, and included with Game Pass, just to get people on board with their product. And I was like, Discord would change. And then if it failed, they would do the same thing with Discord, because if they abandoned Mixer, they would abandon Discord if it didn't produce the results they wanted it to. And then Discord would cease to exist. And I think the owners knew that because they saw what happened with Mixer. And I'm so glad that they said, no deal. You're not going to take what we've built and then abandon it when it doesn't work the way you want it to.
Yeah. And it was pretty obvious when Microsoft shut Mixer down out of nowhere. Mixer was not struggling. Well, like half the streamers I knew had left Twitch to Mixer because Mixer had a lot of qualities about it that were simply better, and the payout was slightly better. Mm-hmm. And I think Microsoft was in a bind where they understood that if they wanted to make more money, it wasn't about competing with Twitch. It wasn't about competing with anyone. It was about making money. And if they wanted to make more money, they had to lower how much the streamers were going to be making.
And notice they made all these big purchases after they shut Mixer down. I think they made the Bethesda purchase while Mixer was still a thing.
Yeah.
But it hurt their wallet a little more than they anticipated. So they said to themselves, where can we make that money up? And they were paying streamers on Mixer, but maybe not making as much, because you've got to think all of these platforms are very picky about who they let be partnered and who they're willing to pay revenue to. So, you get these partnered streamers and you're putting them, they basically put them on a payroll, and it's like, all right, well, we're putting out more than we're bringing in, because you've got your average Joe who's probably not making as much as your partnered streamer. And your partner streamers, their revenue fluctuates. You probably want them to make you like $1,000 a month, but they might have a good month. They might have a bad month. And they probably thought, okay, well, we're spending more on this than they're bringing in. And what happens if we cut that expense? Like, what if we just drop it? Oh, we can make that, we'll save that money, and boom, we'll be able to buy Activision Blizzard later down the line. Because then they shut Mixer down month, I think like a year or so goes by, and then now, hey, here comes a big purchase later down the road, a few years later, for Activision Blizzard. How do you make the most while spending the least? That's just business basics. How do I turn my 2 cents into $200? That's Microsoft's thought process. And it works out for them. And it's probably more money for them in than out to offer everything under these subscription-based services, because it's an infinite source of money. They don't have to spend a lot. They want to get away from, hard copies and digital packaging, because that costs them money. But to put something in a digital space, to put something in a metaverse, costs them way less. I'm pretty sure that the gurus and the know-it-alls will say, no, it costs more because of carbon this and yeah, okay, sure. Show me where those numbers break down and make sense for a developer to upload their probably one version of a game to a server that's already paid for, where everyone can just access it and download it. What else does that cost them money other than just to pay? And here's the thing. You can't even say that they're paying for the space if it's their own product, if it's their own servers. Like, it's not like they're paying Amazon for it. So who are they paying for it? Just the workers to keep it up.
As many servers as Amazon owns and controls, and most gaming servers in some form or another use the Amazon servers, which we've talked about before. But Facebook does have its own servers. Or I should say Meta has its own servers.
Meta has its own servers. And I'm pretty sure a lot of the games that Microsoft provides, they've got their own. Or they've got exclusive contracts that actually wind in the long run save them money if they're renting out, cloud services from Amazon or whomever. But for Microsoft to be spending this money, they're making more than they're spending. 100%. They're making way more than they're spending, especially when you put out, what is it? The newest Windows 11 is the newest one. All of these people with brand new computers still were being told that their computer couldn't handle Windows 11. More than half of those people probably said, crap, I have to buy a brand new computer for Windows 11. And then when I saw all the Microsoft fanboys going, Microsoft doesn't need you to buy a new computer. This isn't to get them to buy you a new computer. That's when I knew that's exactly what it was, because they were so fast to say that's what it wasn't, that just told me that's exactly what it is.
I'm honestly surprised that my PC or anyone's PC still runs well with Windows 10 right now, because I felt pretty sure that if that was the case and they were forcing everyone, that there was going to be a lot of issues with the updates and stuff.
No, well, they already knew. I think Microsoft isn't stupid. Do you realize how much more problems they would have? Right now, they got the FTC up their ass. I'm pretty sure they foresaw this. They probably pay for the best lawyers, and the lawyers said the FTC is going to wind up being up your ass. This isn't their first rodeo running with that. You know, when Google took them to court, they've done this before. Microsoft is patient. They bide in their time. They knew they couldn't fight two war fronts simultaneously. So they knew they could not mess up anyone's PCs, because then people would start getting curious. If you start messing with people's personal home PCs, but work companies, because companies spending the least to make the most, if they don't see a reason to upgrade, they won't. How many places have you worked where your home computer was more up to date than the computers at work?
Don't even get me started on that, dude. I not a day goes by, I'm like sitting at the computers at the hospital, like can you start? Can you start?
Yeah.
I log in, it's like, give us several minutes. Like, what do you mean give you several minutes? It's 2022. Several minutes for what? What are you waiting on?
You're waiting on to remember how to get to the internet.
Jesus.
But that proves my point. You know, these big companies, they have these contracts. If they don't see a reason to update, they're not going to update. And Microsoft couldn't put out anything that tampers with those operating softwares without outing themselves, because then they would get in trouble with the contracts. They would get in trouble with companies. It wouldn't just be affecting personal people. It would start affecting businesses. And then that would make everyone side-eye Microsoft like, yo, what you doing? So they couldn't tamper with the operating system, because then they would have to deal with that and the FTC right now simultaneously. And as big and as powerful as Microsoft is, they can't handle that kind of, heat at the same time. So they got to deal with one problem at a time. By the time they resolve the issue with the FTC, Windows 11 will probably be, available. Everyone will have probably upgraded to Windows 11 anyway, because they'll need new computers anyway.
I got some of the best parts of my computer going to sit there and tell me with a pop-up, my computer does not meet the requirements.
Yep.
What are the requirements?
Exactly. Your requirement is to buy a brand new computer. Spend the money. Because they know most people don't know how to build one. And they see that and they think, oh, I got to go buy a new computer now. It was the end goal. And like I said, the fanboys coming out saying that's not what they're doing just told me, okay, you're over, your just excessive need to say that's not what they're doing just tells me that's what they're doing. But with this whole Sony and Microsoft thing, I cannot for the life of me understand why they can't just cooperate.
One of my biggest reasons for, over the years becoming more of a PC gamer was because I don't have to pay extra to have online access.
Mm-hmm.
I can go to, Steam or Epic or fucking Epic. And anyways, sent them a couple of nasty emails. But the point is I don't have to pay all these extra subscriptions to play the games. I can go through my third-party apps that are very reliable. Most games, plus many more that aren't even on console, are available to me, and I don't have to pay extra for the internet. I already pay for the internet. And that's some bullshit right there that Microsoft started back years ago with the Xbox Gold.
They started it.
They started that shit. And it was one of the reasons why I was happy I had my PlayStation, because they didn't charge me extra. And I know the only reason that they eventually did it was because they had to continue doing at least partially some of the things Microsoft was doing if they were going to continue to compete.
Yeah, and then even eventually Nintendo leaned into it. And I think the whole premise of it used to be a joke way back in the day. And this was the one thing that gave the Xbox 360 such a leg up and kept them competitive with the PlayStation 3 was anyone with a PlayStation automatically had access to online. And one of the biggest outcries, and once again, from the fanboys that made it seem like this is where Xbox was more superior. They were like, oh yeah, well, Microsoft has their own private servers.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and I was
We've
like,
all been duped.
Yeah, and I was
because
like,
everyone's using the Amazon servers. You have an Amazon subscription and a fucking Xbox Gold for fucking online access, and then you're literally paying Amazon 3 times.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it was just a secret contract that they had with Amazon, where here's a good example of what happened. The post office. Everyone sees the post office as a branch of the government. Fun fact, it is actually it's like an honorary branch. It's independent contractor under the government's umbrella. That's basically the United States Postal Service. And Amazon has a contract with the United States Postal Service that they would deliver packages all days of the week, 7 days of the week, because the United States Postal Service told them they could do it the cheapest. Amazon went to USPS, they went to FedEx, they went to, what's the other delivery service? Begins with a D. I don't remember, D something. Anyway, they went to all the other major ones, and those companies told them, no, not doing that, not 7 days a week. United States Postal Service said, we can do it 7 days a week because we've got cheaper help under the form of CCAs, city carrier assistants and rural carrier assistants, because they treat the CCAs and RCAs as part-time employees, meaning they don't have to pay them a full wage. They're not yet covered under the union 100%. So, but they're still working there full time while being considered part-time. So they send us out when I work there, they'll send them out, to deliver those Amazon packages, because the regular postal people would have to be paid overtime. The CCAs and RCAs do not. So they only have to pay them like $15, where for a regular postal service person to deliver those packages on a Sunday is like well over $20, $25, maybe more. So they told Amazon, oh, we can do it cheaper. We've got all these CCAs that'll deliver those packages for like $15, $12, $15 an hour. Amazon said, cool, deal, sign that contract. Now, United States Postal Service is in the contract with Amazon to deliver all those packages. It's basically the same thing when you transfer that over to why Xbox Live was a thing. Xbox Live probably went to Amazon and said, we can help you make more money by saying we're offering an exclusive service. All you have to do is anyone who we've coded that has Xbox Live, you improve their connection. That's all you got to do. You improve their connection to your servers while slightly clogging up the competition. And to think they won't do that, just look at the graphics card game. Graphics cards were already hard to come by, and Microsoft saw an opportunity and said, we'll pay, but you send us 70% of those graphics cards. We want most of those graphics cards, and let the competition fight over the rest. Remember what I said earlier, you accuse others of what you're guilty of yourself. Phil Spencer's accusing Sony of trying to make Microsoft and Xbox smaller by maintaining their dominance. What did they literally just do for this last year?
Yep. And the only reason Nintendo wasn't affected by it is because they had already established the Switch a couple years prior. The Switch has been out, and it's just been continuously doing well and holding its own. So they were already established. Consoles were already sold. For the most part, this past couple years, if you bought a new Switch, you were just a little bit behind on the consoles, or you were probably just buying the new one, whatever the case is. But they were much easier to get a hold of. There didn't have to be enough to supply everybody who wanted a new Switch. Mm-hmm. So they didn't take the brunt of that. Sony did, because the new Xbox and the PS5 came out at the same time.
Yep. Like clockwork every
time. In the middle of the Scalpel issue, and shortly after Microsoft had made a deal with was it Nvidia? It was one of the I think it was Nvidia, but it was one of the the bigger graphics card companies. 70% of the market.
70%.
And it really hardly made like national, like worldwide news. But I remember us talking about it. We did find some resources on it. And even we were like, holy shit, like they really did that.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what they're doing now. Like if they just terminated that contract, because I'm pretty sure that kind of contract.
I don't know. I never heard anything about it, but there was a lot of backlash on it. Yet there were so many people defending Microsoft, which blew my mind.
Microsoft defended forever. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Xbox Live came to be because that's the kind of deal they probably cut with Amazon, to get in their good graces, hey, we'll bring you more revenue, whatever, people pay us Xbox Live. We take 10-15%. You guys get to keep the rest under the guise of we have better servers, and we bought it. We believe that. We believe that they had these super secret powerful servers all over the place. And then no one asked the question, well, if Microsoft doesn't actually have any of their own IP games, who the heck, who's making the servers? All these games have their own servers? Activision Blizzard? Like, well, I'm paying you to play this game online, but then I could go grab my PS3 and still play this exact same game online at no extra charge.
Right. And here, this is an easy way to see if a game that you're playing has its own servers or not. World of Warcraft. They charge you a monthly subscription fee. It's not because they do constant updates. It's not for graphical updates. Sure, they throw that stuff in over the years, but it's because what you're paying that monthly subscription for, the main reason is that game is they have its own servers, very specific servers just for World of Warcraft. It's not through Amazon or anyone else. That's why you pay a monthly subscription, to help keep those servers up and running.
Yeah.
And they have to, because the game is so massive. They have to have their own servers.
And I don't think any company, not even Activision Blizzard, is going to waste time making servers for games like Call of Duty with how often they come out.
And yeah, and honestly, I feel like Blizzard has been pretty fair about the prices of the subscription anyways, because I remember I think I was like 11 or 12 when I had originally started playing World of Warcraft. And I vividly remember that monthly subscription being $10, and it's $15 now. That's not bad.
That's not bad.
And, maybe someone who had been playing from the beginning remembers a cheaper subscription, but still like a $5 change in the past 15, 20 years. It's not terrible.
Yeah, that's actually really, really good. But yeah, that's my theory on the whole Xbox Live, why it came to be. And it basically, once again, we unconsciously did it to ourselves, because here's another issue that probably gave Microsoft hey, we can say it's this, upsell it and make it sound like way more than it really is, was when people's biggest complaint was, oh my gosh, I hate getting on these games and there's just tons of kids. So Microsoft saw an opportunity probably to just, well, why don't we just paywall it? It eliminates the kids, makes the competition look sloppy because they're still full of kids. And we just also say that better internet server access, faster, blah, 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 whatever. It's just a throttling thing. It's just like a door. Your access to the internet is literally like a door. It's just how wide they're going to open it for you, or how much they can close it for you.
I've proven that a couple times too, if you buy your own router and you compare the upload and download and ping and all that stuff to what you had prior when you had the basic company router, you'll see that you're actually getting what you're paying for when you purchase your own router and do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because even when you're paying for it, they like to throttle that down. You don't actually get all of it.
Yeah. And it was awesome that when we got our house internet updated, and the guy who came and did the internet, I feel the only reason he said it is because he saw that I had bought an outside router. So I knew what I was doing. A lot of the time these guys, they come and they can tell, most people, they don't take the time to learn the tech stuff because they feel like it's not that important. It's just computer jargon. They're just like, oh, I just need my internet access. You might want to do a little bit of research and learn some of these things to make sure you're not paying all this money and not getting the full benefit of what you're paying for. Because when he came and he saw the router that I had a Nighthawk back, it's updated now.
Which are the way to go. Those Nighthawk routers, although a little expensive, they'll last you for at least 10, 15 years. They're damn good routers.
Yeah. So when I did that, and he was like, bro, I'm not even gonna give you a company router. Your router's better.
Yep.
He was like, you already got a better router. You're good. And I was like, yeah, I know. And then that was proof I can't fool you. And I can't put this on your bill that you're renting our stuff.
Yeah.
Because your stuff is better. So I just say, take some time, do the research, learn things. But anyway, we want to turn this over to you guys. What do you guys think about Microsoft and Activision Blizzard? Do you think that this will be better for gaming? If you happen to know anyone in the industry or work in the industry yourself, we would love to hear your thoughts on it. Is this a good thing for gaming? Is this a bad thing for gaming? Is Sony just crying, foul? We'd love to hear both sides of this conversation. You've heard our thoughts, so now we want to hear your thoughts. So definitely hit us up on our website, osn-media.com. Click on the show page, click the GZ Chop Shop podcast, and at the very top of the page, you can submit your thoughts there. Also, if you guys love the podcast and love everything we do, think about supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/OSN Media. And you guys can get these episodes actually now up to a week early. So if you guys want to check these episodes out pretty much not long after we record them and want to get them completely ad free and also get promo codes to our store, exclusive Patreon perks and more, and have access to the podcast sometimes at least once a month when we live stream them, there you go. Patreon.com/OSN Media. We really appreciate the love and support over there. So thank you also to our current Patreons. We love and appreciate you guys as well. Anyway, that's all for this episode. You've been amazing. Look after yourself and each other. We'll catch all you wonderful people next podcast.